The Big Bang Notable Book List showcases titles expanding the universe of young minds, one read at a time. Imprints at Holiday House and Simon & Schuster already submitted their titles. Have you? Submit your books for free for a chance to be featured. Learn more at thestorytellersshelfpodcast.com/submissions.
Hi, storytellers, and welcome back again to the Storyteller Shelf podcast. As usual, I'm Jackie here with Teresa, and you guys are joining in for our monthly theme of transformation. And we're not just talking about on a personal self-care level here. We're talking about books and how stories can help transform communities and how we as people can actually be active participants in change. So we are super, super thrilled to share that we have two guests here with us, Caleb and Lupe from Bookmarks, one of the country's only nonprofit independent bookstores. We are so happy to have you guys on. And we start with the less hard questions, which are, we want to get to know you. So let's start with you, Lupe. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and how you got to Bookmarks?
Yeah, absolutely. I am a mother of four. I live here in Winston-Salem, and I've loved reading since I was young. Growing up, I was born and raised in Southern California to an immigrant mother. And as I learned English, she learned with me. And so we would go to the public library every Saturday. And she really instilled that love of education and reading in me to the point where my first job was as a library page at the public library after we moved to North Carolina. And so I've always loved books and stories. And I discovered Bookmarks when it was just a festival. So as the festival grew and then the bookstore opened, I became a customer. And then this role of the youth and schools manager came open, and it kind of embodied everything that I love: books, stories, families, and children. And I was so convinced that I was like, nope, I'm not going to get this job. And then I did. And it's been a dream. Everybody I meet is like, you have the best job. And I really do. So, and now being a mom, I get to share stories in this job with my children, getting introduced to new books and stories all the time. And also, I feel like because there's not a lot of diversity still in publishing, I get to be somebody that looks and sounds like me that brings books to kids in the community.
That is awesome. Our listeners by now at this point will realize Teresa and I talk too much about representation in literature. Like, we'll be okay. But at the same time, yes, we're really excited for this. Love that you got your start in library sphere because we have several librarians that we know tune in. So hopefully we'll be getting some stuff. All right, Caleb, what about you? What is your personal journey and how did you get to Bookmark?
So, I grew up largely abroad, kind of like from when I was a baby to 18 years old. I was in Southeast Asia and in various countries there, and that kind of gave me kind of a different perspective on the world. And then I was often by myself. So then books became a very important part of my life because I was like, well, I'm in this weird place with people I don't know, but I have my book. So I've always kind of been a book person and worked in books. Like straight out of college, I worked at a used bookstore here in Winston for almost 6 years, and then kind of found my way to Bookmarks shortly thereafter and started off just as a bookseller here in the store, and then slowly took on more um, inventory and buying responsibilities. And now I'm the inventory manager. So I'm the one who has the amazing privilege and also like the heavy weight of deciding what we carry in the store and what we stock and how much. And so yeah, like Lupe said, it really is like a very special place, and y- I'm very lucky to be where I am every day, just with people who are kind of pushing towards a similar goal. And we all got here from different ways. We all care about the same thing, and so it's really cool.
That's awesome. Two people from very different backgrounds coming to one common area. And this is why we love talking about journeys and pathways on how people get to where they are. And we would love to ask you both if you could describe in a little more detail what your job does at Bookmarks. And Caleb, let's start with you because you touched on it a little bit.
Well, to kind of go back to your previous thing, I have no formal training in like books or publishing or anything. Stumbled into it, learned on the fly as I went, and I think that's how a lot of people do it, and it works fine. Um, as far as what I do in my day to day, so I'm in charge of the inventory that we carry here in the store, and then all of the inventory for our events and school visits and subscriptions and everything that we have. Kind of seasonally meet with all the different publishers with their sales reps. We go over their catalogs. They let me know what's coming out. I look at things and I kind of decide, what fits in with Bookmarks, what's our personality, what fits in with our mission. We care a lot about what are the voices that we can highlight this season from this publisher. And then I share that with the staff and I'm like, hey, everyone, we have 20 of this book coming. We need to read it and champion it. And so a lot of my job kind of after I meet with publishers is like making sure our booksellers and staff know what's kind of coming down the pipe. Like right now I'm placing orders for things that are coming out in November and January and February. So it does kind of mess with your brain a little bit because I'm like buying Christmas books in March and then kind of monitoring our store stock. So going through the section that we have here in the store, evaluating what we have, how long have we had this? How many times have we sold it? There's lots of like data and nitty gritty stuff that I do every day as well, but mostly just kind of monitoring the flow of books in and out of the store.
Caleb's very humble, so we're going to try to make him a little less humble while he's hanging out with us. For the people who are tuned in, who are authors and illustrators, a lot of them have a curiosity about what kind of feels like a mystery of how we choose books that are appropriate for inventory. So I know you mentioned especially diversity is something that's very important to you to have represented in your store. So if you need diversity, how do you gauge we need books representing this culture or this type of person? What makes a good fit?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And there's not really just like one answer. I think kind of the constant evaluation, like every couple of months I'll check in on every section in the store and be like, okay, I'm going to use science and nature as an example, just because that's where my head always goes. So I'll go through and be like, okay, we have like 1,000 books about birds and like nothing about dinosaurs. So let me balance that tray. And then as far as diversity, especially in kid lit, with like picture books and middle grade novels and things like that, it's much easier for me to kind of dip into what the publisher usually provides, like a sample or maybe even the entire picture book. So I can like quickly go through and be like, okay, this is something that our store doesn't have. But so it is like a very proactive process. And I notice if I neglect a section too long, I'll go back and be like, okay, wow, this is really lopsided now. We have way too much of this and not enough of this. So I don't know if that really answered your question, but I think just a constant evaluation of what we have and then encouraging our publishers to be like, hey, this is what we need. I remember a couple years ago, there was a big lack in books that with like dyslexic friendly fonts. And in the past year, I've seen a lot more publishers kind of release lines and titles that kind of come in dyslexic friendly versions. So I think like that's also our job as well to tell publishers like, this is what we're missing. As much as I love, I don't know, pigs or something, we don't need like 10 more picture books about pigs but I'll look at them because they're pigs. But like, just kind of keeping that communication open is very important.
And the answer is really, it depends on what you're lacking, what you see from your community, and that two-way street. And from being on the other end of the street, I know there's a lot of communication. The publishers, they have to be proactive in saying, we have this in our catalog. And usually there's a reason why. And that reason, especially for diversity, is that they're trying to make up for a lack of books. That's what makes it work. All right, Lupe, hot seat time. Will you tell us a little more about what you do at Bookmarks?
Sure. Much like Caleb, I have no formal training in the book industry. I was really nervous coming in. I was a reader, but I wasn't knowledgeable of like all the kid lit. And so my role now as the youth and schools manager, I didn't really have anything formal before. I was a day camp director. I've been a 911 operator. So yeah, a lot of different things. But like I said before, this job kind of married a lot of the things that I love. And so as the youth and schools manager, I oversee pretty much what it sounds like, our relationship with our schools and our kids events and engagement with the community for kids and families. So we have several programs that kind of fall into that umbrella in our outreach department. Our one of our biggest ones is authors in schools, which is we work with publishers who have authors that are touring, and we put in requests to host these authors, and then they agree to send them to us, and we take them to the schools at no charge. So normally if a school wants to host an author, is several $1,000s. And we know regardless of where the school is, every school doesn't have that. I've learned a lot in this role that just because a school is in an affluent neighborhood doesn't mean that they have a budget for books. And so that's why librarians do book fairs and things like that, because they're not guaranteed a budget for books. So we bring authors to all schools in our county, private schools, public schools, charter schools, so and non-traditional schools. And it's really, really cool to watch the authors engage with the students. And like Caleb said, speaking to diversity, when you see an author that looks like you or a story that's similar to yours, it can really change lives. Another program is our Field Trips to Bookmark program. It's newer in the last few years, where we invite schools to bring a certain number of students. It's like 30 students, but I pushed it to like 80 sometimes because we are a small bookstore, but we bring the kids, we pay for the bus, we give the librarian funds for new books for their library. But the kids come in, they learn about what we do, they see the bookstore. And that experience that sometimes we take for granted of being able to go to the bookstore, but 90% of the kids that come on a field trip have never been in a bookstore. And so they come in and we let them choose 3 books of their choice to take home at no cost to them or the school. And so they get to shop, and sometimes we include a snack or lunch. We do an activity. And a lot of times when people think, oh, we're working on promoting literacy and the love of reading, they think younger kids because early literacy is so important. But it's all ages. We've had kindergartners all the way to high school. And honestly, the high school trips are my favorite. They're so cool. Middle schoolers make me a little nervous. But it's always great to see kids of all ages engaging with books or being introduced to books. And it's really cool. The other thing I oversee our story time that we do about once a month. We do once a month from March through December. And then we have kids events, meet and greets with authors, different specialty story times and things like that. But mainly my relationship with the schools is through the librarians. That's why I say I love librarians. They are rock stars. I wish I was a librarian. I found out what I wanted to be when I grew up late in life. I can do this next best thing is I can work with them and support them. And that's what I love about being in this organization is not going to a school and saying, here's what you need. It's really being in a place where we can listen and say, what do you need? Tell us how we can support you. And being able to shift what we do to meet that.
So, Caleb, for our listeners who may be new to Bookmarks, what is the mission of the organization and how did it evolve from one-time event into a year-round nonprofit?
So it started off just as someone had an idea to have a book festival. Started off as a junior league project 20 years ago this year. It'll be our 20th festival. And they kind of developed this festival and then kind of registered as a nonprofit. And then our youth and schools program kind of grew out of that. And our town didn't have an independent bookstore. We have a great used bookstore in town, which is where I used to work, but no new bookstore. And so that was a need that we saw. And so in 2017, July 2017, the bookstore opened kind of as we envisioned it as kind of a community hub and kind of a public facing view of Bookmarks. And it's been great having this space because we can have events here. And we've gotten to reach so many more people. It used to be that people knew us just for the festival. And now a lot of people know us for the bookstore. And we're like, but also we have a festival and programs all year round. But as far as the missional drive is just, we believe that books and stories have power and that everyone deserves to see themselves in books. And we want to kind of realize a future where you can build a community around books and stories and the powers that they can bring. And so we try to kind of enter into every new thing with that mindset, whether it's an author event or let's change these sections around, or, so like basically how can we listen to our community and serve them better and make people feel seen.
And I think we said we're going to talk about access. It's a big part of our mission, but really just being inclusive and being a place where that creates a sense of belonging for everybody.
But what does it mean to be a nonprofit independent bookstore?
First and foremost, we're a nonprofit. And so anytime somebody comes to the bookstore and buys a book or buys a ticket to an event or supports our festival or just donations, it goes right back into this community. I get to spend all the money. So I take the money to the schools or bring the kids to shop at the store. And it's what makes it special.
I think, yeah, it provides kind of an overall thrust to what we do every day, and a mission behind it. But then also it allows us to do things we might not be able to do if we were just a small for-profit store. It gives us access to grants and funding that allows us to do more programming, and also allows us to give people health insurance, which is important, but a lot of independent bookstores can't do that because the margins are so thin with books. And so we're really proud of this nonprofit model. Our executive director, Jamie Rogers Southern, is always talking to people who are interested in doing something similar, because I think it is a really unique way to kind of approach a bookstore, and it allows you to do things that you might not be able to do. And then it also gives you, beyond just the love of books, which is a great reason to get up in the morning, you have a mission and you have something you're trying to do and work towards. We have a great community of volunteers. So much of it, I feel is so different from anything I've experienced, and it makes it really unique and special. And it makes it feel like we are a community involved in our community.
Bookmarks describes itself as a place that fosters connection. And we're talking about community, critical thinking, equity, and action. Can you share an example of when these values are brought to life in a meaningful way?
Really, our community really backs us up. One example, we have our field trips, and there was somebody that was just coming through town, and they found our bookstore, and they came into a little bit of money, and they said they wanted to do something special with it. And so they funded a field trip, and we picked a school. I believe it was a middle school, and they were able to be there while the kids were shopping, and it was really cool. But again, like I said, the things that we sometimes take for granted that other people don't experience, watching the kids look through the window and look into the bookstore, or coming in, seeing a book that has their first name on it, and being my full name is Guadalupe, that never happened to me. So, I never found my name on keychains or anything like that. So being able to show a kid oh, look, that's your first name. It just really speaks to that we all deserve to have access to all these things. One thing that we've talked about as an organization too is not just access, but ownership. So if you think about, we love public libraries and that everybody can have access to them. But if you think about where our reading scores are in the community and how they're tied to how many books you have at home, because if you think of the things that you need to do your job or to live your life, if you had to borrow it every time you needed it, how much that would change your life and your livelihood, whether it's technology, a car, whatever tools you use every day. And so the same thing similarly with books. If you don't have access to them all the time, through ownership, it makes a world of a difference of how often you read, how engaged you are in reading. And I don't know the exact statistic, but it can increase reading test scores by a lot. And sometimes even just a little bit can change whether a child can move on to the next grade or not. So just all those things combined is we're not just targeting it from one side or the other. It's kind of everything on it.
And this is a very small example, but it really kind of reminded me in the moment of just okay, this is why we're doing what we're doing. We have a passport club here in the store. So last year I made a booklet with every country in the world and current recommended reading suggestions for every country. You can get your passport. We have a little fake visa stamp, when you've read a book. And we had our first meetup of people who have been doing it. And I advertised it horribly. Like I forgot to send out the newsletter. It was in my drafts. So I sent it out like the day before. I was like, what a disaster. No one is going to come to this. But then a couple people came and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a disaster. There's like 3 people here. But it was like one of the most meaningful events I've had here because there's a woman from Turkey who is new in town and like, she joined us to meet people. And it was a woman who has lived in North Carolina her entire life and has never left and is using this as a way to explore the world. And this woman from Turkey who has recently moved here, I've seen her in the store like 15 times after this meeting because she's just like, okay, this is a place I can be. This is a place I feel I can be included in. And I think that's kind of reminded me of kind of the unique things that we can do here.
I think that is great, especially in this day and age where everything's technology, everybody's on their screen. And when you have that connection where you're in person and having a conversation, I think that's beautiful. This is so fun because this is where we get into the gritty details of it's not just about selling books, but more than that is you're safe to explore and learn and grab things that are foreign to you. But here's my question for you. This is more on the business end. Can you tell us about the challenge of actually reaching people? So, a lot of us have great ideas on how to bring people together to create those safe and fun places where books unite us, but they just don't know how. So, could you tell us from a business aspect, how do you actually speak to your community?
I think it's one of the things that we've also talked a lot about is, how do we reach everybody? And a lot of people either know us as the nonprofit or the festival or the bookstore, and not all of them. And so, there's obvious things. We have social media, we have our newsletters, and then the people that come into the bookstore, we're trying to connect them to the things that we do outside of the bookstore. But we're constantly trying to evolve with the time. I think we got a TikTok this year. That was really cool. So it just depends on how the community wants to be engaged.
I can speak kind of generally to things that I've noticed and I think one thing that I love about Bookmarks is our willingness to try things, and sometimes they work amazingly. Sometimes it's kind of a disaster. And okay, we're never doing that again. But we learn a little bit every time, and I think it can be hard to be patient for results. I think we live in a world where we want to see the number go up or see the reaction immediately, and to just kind of like stick to it and kind of operating on that. If you build it, they will come kind of thing, and be patient while that happens. That can be hard, especially if there's like financial, like if it's your money into a bookstore and no one is coming. But I think that patience is a big thing, and then being intentional, like, um, we've had events and programs, or like we've put a new section in the store, and I'm like, man, no one's coming to this, and no one's buying this, and it's like, well, have we told people about it? Have we reached out to the people in the community we're trying to reach? We can't. So kind of like being very intentional and proactive while also like being willing to be like, hey, last month 1 person came, this month like 6 people came. Amazing. Maybe we'll get to a point where thousands of people are coming, but for now we'll take the wins where we can get them. And it can be disheartening sometimes when you put your heart into something and it doesn't turn out the way you wanted it to. But that's why it's nice to have like a team of people that can, no, you did, it'll be great, or don't worry, or so I feel like Lupe is always encouraging me, and I'm trying to encourage her. And if you're doing the work and you're doing something, like people will come and people will see it, and it might take a minute, but it'll happen.
Our community, our volunteers, our donors, other people who truly believe in our mission and who are invested in it also share our story. And as part of the outreach team, we also talk to other organizations who have similar missions or parallel missions that are doing the work in the community, and how can we support what they're doing. And just like Caleb said, doing the right thing and doing good and getting our name out there that way. Sometimes it's things that we can't change, like infrastructure. Like we're downtown and we're not accessible to a lot of people on different sides of town. So we try to bring events to them through our outreach or things like that. So kind of adjusting to different things depending on what your goal is.
I think that's great. And I like that you mentioned the newsletter. That's something that we actually have on our podcast. But when you think about your readers, what are your readers gravitating towards right now?
Right now, we are seeing kind of, and in the past kind of year-ish, kind of big influx and movement towards, um, and not in a negative way. Please do not hear this as a negative thing, but kind of things that allow an escape, whether that's science fiction and fantasy, romantasy, thrillers. The world is heavy right now, and I think people are looking for ways to do what they love, which is to read, but if to kind of escape or see a different version of what the future could be or what reality could be. But in the meantime, we've also had like a big uptick in people like reading sociology, political, people who are seeing the state of the world and be like, okay, I need to learn about this. How can I be involved? So kind of like two ends of the spectrum there, but those are kind of where we've seen a lot of growth in the store in the past year.
I'm just speaking from like my conversations with librarians in schools and what they need in their libraries. Middle grade romance, like, yeah, has been. I just got a question today, like, do you have a list of middle grade romance, like where it's not YA yet, but it's just that, you know, crush kind of age appropriate middle grade romance. And as always, graphic novels, a lot of the, things that were written in middle grade novels now are graphic novels. And it's a good segue. I think one of the things that we combat is adults who see graphic novels as a negative thing. They're like, nope, they don't want to spend however much money on a graphic novel that the kid's going to read in like 10 minutes. But but it's a good way to get kids introduced into the world of reading if they're not. Horror. Young kids want horror as well, and that's something that they can't keep on their shelves.
It's kind of across the board, and I've talked to multiple librarians or media coordinators who are like, do you have anything scarier than this? Like scary enough for my kids?
And I have to pop in and just say I loved horror when I was a kid. I was a Goosebumps kid. And that was pretty much the only thing I wanted to read.
Yeah, I love Goosebumps. A scary stories tell in the dark with the like original.
Let's talk a little bit more about challenges. I'd love to hear the different types of challenges that you might encounter, whether it's something that could be small during your day that you need to brainstorm how to work around so that you're able to do what you want to do. And also, sort of mission wise, have you ever run into anything that pushes back against what you're doing?
For us, there's a couple things right now that are kind of the big things in the past couple of years. The rising cost of books, like the retail price of new books keeps creeping up and creeping up and creeping up. And it's like picture books are now $21.99 new, and it's like yeesh. Like we're already having trouble, making them accessible to families, and that is a constant thing we're battling. And we might get the same amount of funding, but if books are now $2 more expensive, that's like less books that we can distribute out in our community. And so that's something that I'm in constant dialogue with our publishers about, is like, hey, this is hard, especially when for so long the big A, Amazon, has kind of devalued books in people's minds. So they're like, a book is $8, and it's, well, no, it's not. Like it's worth more than that, and it costs more than that. And so that's a constant battle here in the store. And then kind of on the kids side is, there's a lot of factors, but COVID and reading levels kind of dropping and things, we're having a lot of challenges carrying books that have a lower reading level but like a higher interest level. So I'm an 8th grade boy and I have a lower reading level, and so the books that are at my reading level are about like ponies and, things. And I don't want to feel like a baby when I'm reading books that I can read. And so trying to bridge that gap of having books that where the content is a little aged up, but the reading level is accessible is always a challenge. And I'm always on the lookout for things that we can stock that kind of fit that quota.
Yes. And in my work in the community and schools, one of the biggest challenges is censorship and book banning. And so every school system is responding in a different way. And when we brought author schools, it would be really exciting and everybody could be included, where now they're requiring permission slips, which is adding a barrier, whether it's language or access or whatever it may be. So yeah, some of those things I think the people making the decisions don't realize how powerful the visits can be. It's really just introducing books to kids that will ignite that love of reading or reinforce it or make them feel seen and heard.
Unfortunately, these are challenges that we're hearing so many people face, again, from every point of view, whether it's an organization or a publisher to the actual creatives themselves trying to, just get their work out there, trying to interact with communities. So thank you for being very, again, candid about what you face on a regular basis, which is, could you share one or two moments that really spoke to you? Two moments that stay in your memory of something optimistic, positive, and happy that happened while you were working at Bookmarks.
I feel like anytime I bring an author to school, it's just another magic moment. There was one of our first field trips, though. It was our very first field trip to the bookstore. We had kids, they're mostly Latino Hispanic kids, had never been to a bookstore, Title I school. And so we brought them over, and they were those kids that were like putting their faces to the window. So I have a picture of them in my office, of them like looking through the window. And they came in and they were just so excited. I had read a book that year by Xochitl Gonzalez. And Xochitl is like, not a common name. And one of the girls, her name was Xochitl. And I was like, oh my gosh, Xochitl, I love your name. One of my favorite authors, her name's Xochitl. And she was like, nuh-uh. Again, she had never seen her name anywhere. And I took her over to where the books were and I showed her and her face lit up. And I took a picture and I still have that picture too of like she's obviously not going to read that book, but just having somebody with her name that she never sees anywhere and a place that sometimes probably tells her that she doesn't belong or, or she doesn't feel like she belongs, having something like that on a shelf. I can't imagine like that feeling. And I can imagine it, but just that moment lives in my memory so much on the days where I just need a little bit of a bright spot. So yeah, it's been one of my favorites, and it's been rippled through other moments, and that's just one that I will always remember.
You guys are taking me down memory lane. Remember, when I was a kid, there were no picture books on being Puerto Rican and Puerto Rican families. I can't remember one at all, but I remember Nickelodeon had a show eventually with my last name in it. It's Garcia, and I was like having a celebration of disbelief for about a month as a child. So those are really magical moments, and I think it's amazing that you get to see it firsthand, right? And I'm glad you have some pictures as well.
I I feel like our field trips sum up so much of what we're about and what we're trying to do because it's an immediate connection. The kids are in charge of what they want to take home. If they want to take home 3 Minecraft books, amazing. One of my favorite things to do at field trips is I'm always stationed in manga because I read manga, and then they see like, they have Dragon Ball, they have One Piece, and they get so excited. And just getting to talk to them about like, they're like, well, I already read this one. Each get 3 books. So the friends will be like, well, I'll get volumes 1, 2, and 3. You get 4, 5, and 6. And then we'll like swap. And that excitement of books can be lost when you're in your office answering emails and where books are just like numbers on your spreadsheet or whatever. So I think those moments where you can actually get out and engage with people and hear what they like and what they don't like. This is one of my favorite bookmark memories. Sorry, this is totally random. And it might not sound like a happy story, but to me, it's like one of the most memorable things that's happened to me in the store. We're next to a coffee shop and bar and event space. We're kind of attached. They're separate business, but we share a space, and they often host big events, weddings, and things. So one night I was working, and a lady wandered over from the wedding, and she was like, "Hey, recommend a book to me." And I was like, "Great, awesome." So I recommended to her the Incarnations by Susan Barker, which is one of my favorite novels. It's about like 2 souls over 10,000 years of like Chinese history, like coming back. And she's like, I'm going to write your name in this and read it and come back and tell you what I think about it. So she wrote my name in it. And I was like, cool, great. I'm never going to see this person again. 2 months later, she comes back. She goes, Caleb, that was the worst book I've ever read. Amazing. You read it. And there's something about it. I was like, you actually read the whole thing. You came back and we had a nice conversation about how much you hated it and why I liked it. She's like, cool, I don't agree with you at all. And I was like, great, that's awesome.
Books bring us together even when not positive experience with them. All right, let me ask for the authors on here. If we want to tour and do things with Bookmarks, what do we have to do?
So there's different things. It just depends. Like Kayla said, we work a lot with publishers, but we do have a page on our website for authors, depending on every author's in a different place in their journey where they get published and all that stuff. A lot of times for us, we work 4 to 6 months in advance. So we might not know, like Kayla said, we might be planning for December, but we might not know where that fits into whether our programming or things like that now. But we always have a list of like authors, what they have, where they live, what they have available, what voice are they bringing up to the forefront, because we believe every story, every voice is worth hearing. And so we keep that in our catalog of like, oh, you know what? I need a story time about kids with different abilities. We connected with this author who lives semi-local. Let's reach out to them and see if we could do a story time. So it's just different ways. There's not really a formula for it, but there's anytime an author can connect with us and say, here's what I have. And we try to engage with them when we can and how we can.
So the similar on our website, our for authors page, like we have it's like a list of questions, like, are you traditionally published? Yes or no? And then the path branches from there. And so I do a lot of stuff with our independently published authors. The most important thing I can say to any self-published author is please do not use CreateSpace or any Amazon owned thing, only because that will automatically make you not be able to be stocked by a lot of indies just because they don't want to support Amazon. So if your book is through CreateSpace, they're probably not going to want to stock it. Ingram Spark is another great self-published arm. That's usually where we point people to. But yeah, it's kind of a case-by-case thing. And, I try to review them and do my due diligence. We do get a lot of requests from like local and independently published people. And sometimes those turn into cool events or just like things we stock in the store. But yeah, as Lupe said, like the earlier you can make your store aware of like, hey, in October, I have this thing coming out, just because so many people are trying to plan ahead and book out the calendars rather than be like, hey, tomorrow, can I do a signing in your store? It's like, probably not. I'm sorry.
Do you have a favorite local author?
I'm going to say Stacey McAnulty. She is a kids author. She's written picture books, middle grade novels, kids nonfiction about space. She has been a partner with Bookmarks for as long as the bookstore has been open. I think after I was hired, my first store event was with Stacey McAnulty back in 2017. She's always got a new book coming out. She's always doing school visits. She's always like excited about being an author, which I think is really inspiring to me. Like she loves doing it and has just been a big supporter of Bookmarks. So I will shout out Stacey McAnulty.
Yes, we love Stacey. I know. I was like, I want to say Stacey too. We have another local author illustrator, Ellen Heck. She is amazing. She has a book called A is for B. So it's a book in translation. So where in English, A is for apple, in another language, it's for bee, the insect. And she also created the illustrations, and those illustrations are like in reverse. So like she has the black canvas and you have to scratch it off. And so she's able to like show us the illustration, the way that she created that. So we've done school visits with her. She's had a recent book called The Golden Gate, so which is the story of how the Golden Gate Bridge was built and the history. And so she illustrated that one. She didn't write it. But she has another book coming out this summer called Sunflower, I believe. So it's another beautifully illustrated picture book. And Ellen's so great. She's great with kids at school visits. She's great at story time. She actually came to one of our field trips and did story time with the kids at the field trip. So she's a great supporter of Bookmarks, and we love working with her. So hi, Ellen.
Those were awesome answers. And I want to let you guys know that we are so happy that you guys came on. We're so happy that you were willing to kind of talk to us about work and also just about who you are and about books and the state of the world in general. We appreciate you guys being such great sports, and we are going to talk to our listeners now and say, if you're still here, which we know you are, please go to our website, thestorytellershelfpodcast.com, go to that episodic calendar page and click on Bookmarks so that you guys can find out where they are online and go investigate, see how you guys can be a part of this mission and help. If you enjoyed this episode, give us a like, subscribe to our channel, and share this with a friend because we know that other people out there could use this too. And one last thing, if you like freebies, definitely join us in our email newsletter. Pop your email in, it's for free. We don't spam you, but we occasionally send things like career opportunities, awards and contests, and handy dandy things like pitch guides and query guides that you might find very useful. So otherwise, we will let you go today, and we'll see you again next time.